playing the victim. We're always playing like, why me? Like, why can't I get what I want? Instead of creating the abundance that we're looking for of like, we can have it all. We can do the things that we want to do. We have the power to do that, but we get in the way and we self-sabotage through, our judgments and, you know, things that our safety net kind of goes on. Like we don't deserve that. And the reason why I'm bringing that up with the Chiron and Aries is because gate 55 is about the abundance of spirit. So it's basically, you could have $5 in your pocket, you could have $100 in your pocket. Regardless, you're always going to be okay. And you know that spiritually. But like
Yeah.
the things that get in the way from this spiritual energy that we have is our lowest vibration of playing the victim, being reasonably emotional and demonstrative by being that reasonable, emotional, and self-sabotaging, instead of being like, I get everything I deserve, I know what I deserve, and it's coming to me, and letting go of that control, which is I've been nerding out. I've been reading the Gene Keys about it. I've been reading the human design part of it, and we can go further into that. So, Christy, I'd like to know what you have to say so far.
Well, first of all, I really don't know much about the gates in human design. So I'm like really curious to understand like the difference between conscious and unconscious and like what makes it that way.
Yeah.
Because we were kind of like talking about it a little bit beforehand, like understanding like what the gate rules over. And this is something that I'm curious about in human design in general is like what determines whether or not a gate is open? Is it because like a planet is like at the like like how does
So
astrology play into it? And I guess that'll be a whole other conversation for another time.
I'm actually happy you kind of brought that up, which I'll go into, but continue to talk about what you were going to say. Go ahead.
So yeah, I guess that's just like my question is just like how does astrology play into human design and like how do gates like be how are gates determined as like closed or opened or activated or not?
Well, to the humans who are listening, get your chart up right now. You can go on my website, lauralouu.com, get your chart. You can go anywhere and any other, platforms to find it. And as you look at your chart, you're going to see two bars on each side framing your human design, your actual chart. So you have the design, it says above the design, and you see some planets on there. Those are unconscious. Whereas your personality, which is to the right, that bar, those are the planets that are unconscious. So when I look at yours, so
You mean
for me,
conscious?
oh, sorry, the conscious. So the personality, excuse me, let me edit that. So your design, which is on the left side, is, your unconscious traits. Like that's the energy that you're putting out unconsciously. As the right side is your personality, and that is your conscious trait. So that's what you're pretty aware of. You already know. So for you, you have it on your conscious Jupiter. So your Jupiter represents that conscious energy that you have in that gate 55. Whereas
Oh,
my,
so is that because Jupiter was like at 55 degrees or well that doesn't make sense.
well, that does make sense because it's 55, right? It's gate 55. It's at 55 degrees.
Oh, interesting.
You're like,
Well, no, because each sign is only 30 degrees. So that's why I stopped myself saying it
oh,
can't
okay,
be
yeah,
55 degrees.
just kidding. I thought that was a thing. I'm like, maybe that is it. No, I don't really know. So basically, it talks about the lines, and if you look at like your rave mandala, it kind of shows a little bit further about that and where those located. Because the rave mandala goes with the circular chart in astrology.
Oh, and is that like where the I Ching comes into
Yeah,
play?
exactly. Yeah. So
Got it.
the gate 55, yours is in the conscious Jupiter, whereas mine is in unconscious Mars. So maybe you can go further into like again reminding our listeners about Mars and Jupiter. Well, like going further
Like,
into, yeah, like
yeah,
your Jupiter being your conscious trait in that gate 55, which again is the gate of spirit, which we'll go further and talking more about that,
mm.
all about that.
Well, that's interesting. So I just kind of want to point something out for our listeners too. Like it's something that I just learned. That like the design versus your personality. The personality is like what was happening at the moment you're born, where the design, I think it's like I can't remember the amount of days, but it's like a certain amount of days before you're born is what your design is.
Well, that's like the
And
genes, the genetics, your DNA.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But it's like it comes from like a certain point in time. It's not at the moment of conception. It's like a certain amount of days before you're born. And apparently that has something to do with like when your consciousness starts to develop in the womb. So that's where your design is, where your subconscious comes from. And that's something I've always thought about with astrology. Like, what does when you're conceived have to do with your astrology that astrology kind of overlooks? And we're like, human design doesn't go by when you're conceived so much as like that point in time in the womb. So I love that it kind of like pulls that piece in. Um, so you're not just looking at the moment of birth, you're looking at your time in the womb as well. So I think that's kind of beautiful.
Yeah. So for
That's,
you, it's like yours is conscious. So I'm actually curious to know, like, how does that gate resemble you? Like when I see you and and knowing you for so long, it's like I can see that conscious trait for you. Like where you know your spirituality. Like I mean, I know my spirituality, but I'm afraid to like express it as much as you can. Isn't that if that makes sense?
yeah. So just remind me again, the gate is like, it's called the generosity of spirit or something like that.
Oh, it's called the abundance of spirit. Let me go back to the note. The abundance of spirit. So, what matters in your life revolves around spirit. May that be the spirit of higher aspirations or the spirited nature in which you live day to day. And at the highest, you
Mm.
see joy in everything that comes your way. You know you'll always be okay. And like I was saying before, it's like you could have $5 in your pocket or you can have $100 in your pocket. Regardless, you're going to be walking in at the highest. You're going to be like jumping around and enjoy all the time at everything that you do. At your lowest, that's when you're self-sabotaging, you're unreasonable, you're just emotional, and you don't know how to get out of those emotions. And you're always playing the victim. So you're constantly controlling and trying to self-sabotage things that have happened to you instead of just letting it be. And wherein like you can be portrayed sometimes people portray us as like a drama queen because we're actually feeling our emotions. We're in tap with our emotions. So if you look on your chart, the gate 55 is in your emotion center. So it's in your solar plexus center, which is that triangle to the right.
Right.
And so that makes sense, right? It's like, for me, I guess unconsciously, it's like there, but I am always constantly self-sabotaging and, playing that victim and constantly trying to control the situation instead of being like, it is what it is. If it's for me, it will come back to me. And
Mm.
now that I've recognized it and I've been studying this gate, it's like, oh, if I actually connect with that and like, why am I playing the victim? And this kind of goes in general. Like when you're thinking, I was just listening to a podcast about a girl who was talking about narcissism and how she was saying like narcissism is actually the wound of a victim. So it's like not, I mean, so okay, I think there's a difference between narcissism and sociopaths, right? It's
For
like, I
sure.
feel like, especially now, everyone's like, everyone's a narcissist. Well, it's like, why are you saying that? Like, it's like,
Yeah.
you're actually, because it's all about you. You're not looking at the bigger picture of what's going on around you. And like,
Hmm.
hell, I've been guilty of that. Like, just totally being like, well, why didn't that person want to be with me? Or blah, blah, blah. Or like, why did this happen to me? When it's like, really, just let it go and like let things just kind of work as they should.
Ugh, so many things are coming to mind. So
Right.
first, this first of all, I kind of want to speak to this idea of like the narcissism and like the wounding. I think that first of all, narcissism has become a buzzword. I
Yes.
think that people like to slap narcissism on anybody who pisses them off, and I
Yes.
think it's like kind of it's like obnoxious. Like people learn what a narcissist is and shut the hell up. But we are all narcissists, right? Like
Mhm.
narcissist God who was in love with himself. And really for me in mythology, the gods are just about the archetypes of humanity. And we all have a narcissist in us. Like that is a result of our ego. That is how we survive because we recognize ourselves as distinct individuals. But when you start going down this path of spirituality and self growth and self awareness, there's like this fine line between healing and like I want to make sure I explain this as succinctly as possible. There's a term called spiritual bypass where people will be like, I'm doing this work. And so you have to forgive me for all of my flaws, no matter what. That is not how it works. The point of spiritual work is to know your flaws and then to heal them and improve them. And it can look messy, and you do need support from people, and you do need them to forgive you, but that should not be the basis for your interactions with people. And this is where spiritual work can start to become narcissistic, where you start to put aside the needs of other people for the sake of your own quote unquote healing. That is very dangerous territory. That is what makes a cult leader. It can
Yes.
make a cult leader, right? It's this fine line of spiritual work versus spiritual bypass versus expecting everybody to lay down at your feet while you do the spiritual work. That's not taking true accountability. And that is where you can start to lean into kind of like that victim mode, to try to get, and this is for people on the real dark end of it, not always the case, where people can be manipulative, and play the victim mode and not take accountability for themselves and be and like just use the spiritual work as an excuse to continue to be an asshole. Like that is the epitome of spiritual bypass. Well, part of it, because the other part of spiritual bypass is to like find spiritual meaning in everything and the joy in everything and overlook the dark end of it. Again, that's that shadow work. And if you're truly doing the shadow work, you're taking accountability for where you're showing up like an asshole and learning how to work with your personality traits to improve them to be a better human and improve the lives of those around you. Right. So it's like many spokes to a wheel. So I love like what you said kind of like triggered that for me because I myself on my own spiritual journey, I started to become a little narcissistic where
Oh
I
yeah,
was just like,
100%. I was.
yeah.
There's no
And
there's
but
no coming back from that.
well, but there is coming back from that once you start to bring awareness to it and be like, "Oh, okay, like let's dial it back. Like just
Yeah.
because I'm having a bad day doesn't mean that I can't make dinner for my kids or that I can't clean my cat's litter boxes or that it's okay for me to yell at my partner." Right? Like those things will happen, but that doesn't make it okay. And then recognizing that, taking accountability so that the next time I'm having a bad day, I can see it coming and still make dinner for my kids and then not yell at my partner, right? So it's like, it's I think it's part of the learning process, and I just really want like people to understand that like if you go through this narcissist cycle, I'm not giving you a free pass so much as do better, but give yourself some grace because that's
Yeah.
just part of the human experience too, right? Just don't stay stuck in that human experience. Like move through it and learn to be better than. Um, you know, that's very important to me, like taking that true accountability.
Yeah. And allowing yourself to like, especially during this gaze, like allowing yourself to let go of control and letting spirit take the role and letting the universe provide in a way it should. Like it's
Yeah.
like that's how that energy is actually gonna work. Like because it's unconscious for me, it's hard for me to actually connect with that, you know?
Mm.
So it's like now that I'm like studying it and like kind of connecting with that, that's I've been self-sabotaging all my life. Like, if you think about it, like I've everything that nothing if something did not go my way, I would cry about it. And I would just try to control it, try so hard to like make it work. And like it just repelled. I just kept repelling that energy. And like that's because unconsciously I didn't realize it, but like unconscious, like in my head, I'm like, I just need to let it go because it's gonna come back. I know it's gonna come back. I know it's gonna come back. But at that moment in time, it's not coming back anytime soon. As soon as I let go of that without even thinking I'm letting go, it comes. If it that
Yeah.
and it's like and I
No.
see it because I've seen it happen a million times where it's like, "Oh my god, now I don't want it anymore." Like, you know, 'cause I'm at that point, I've, like, repelled it so much that I got sick of it, and now I don't want it.
And that is the dichotomy, excuse me, that is the dichotomy of being a human.
Yeah, exactly, and I'm like, "Well, okay, cool, like, now bye." Like, I don't know, like but I mean,
Well,
that's the thing, and it's like, there's things that I would like to see come back around, but, like, it's like, but, like, at the same time, me trying to actually control that instead of just letting spirit do what it wants to do, like, me trying to control that is actually not what like, it doesn't serve me. Like, it just has to naturally happen
well,
unconsciously.
here's the thing. The more we try to control things, the more we drive ourselves crazy. And actually, this is so for our next Fluxus event here in Philadelphia, we're doing the theme absurdism. And at first you're like, what the hell does that even mean? But it's actually like this deeper philosophical theory that the more you try to control something, the crazier you're going to become because we control is an illusion. And really, the meaning of life is finding that balance between control and chaos. And so, like, what you're speaking to is kind of like an absurdist philosophy. It's like the more you try to control it, the more you actually push it away. And once you can let it go and allow things to flow, is when you actually get the results. But
Yeah,
then what you're describing is that human condition of like, I've tried so hard that when I finally give up, I don't realize that I'm actually surrendering and I'm letting it come to me. I don't want it anymore because, like, it's worn out its welcome because you've tried so hard and so
yeah.
long.
It's not
And I've
necessarily
definitely
like I
felt
don't
that on
want
a
like,
personal level too.
there's not like it's not like I don't want it, it's just, like, it's hard for me to come back to that, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. Like, it's like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Like
it's
you're
super
like drained from the desire and now that it's here, it's
exactly,
like,
I'm tired, like, the shit that situation put me through, it's like, I don't know. It's like
yeah.
every day.
Well, and so it's funny as you were like reading through this before, like now that I've gotten off my soapbox around spiritual bypass and narcissism, um, reading this, I recognize this in myself so much. Like general rule of thumb. I'm always looking for the bright side of every scenario. I'm always seeing the higher self in people, whether or not they can. I'm always like, what it's que sera, sera. What will be, right? Like that's been my MO for most of my life. And I don't necessarily, have my moments of playing the victim. Like I said, I've been there, I've gone through that, but it's not an underlying theme in my life. But I have been accused of being like irrational as a result of being emotional. And so I can't, like, when you read that, reading that, being accused of like being the drama queen, it like made me think of that person. Like I was operating from a place of emotion and he was like, you're being irrational. And I'm like, you can be rational and emotional. The two are not mutually exclusive. But
But I'm saying, like yeah.
he was trying to weaponize my emotions against me in that moment. That's, another conversation altogether. But yeah, I definitely operate from that place of like feeling the emotion. And again, I have a defined emotional center, you know.
Shit, sorry.
That's all
Okay, continue.
right. I do have that defined emotional center. So yeah, like I kind of like my emotions are the forefront of who I am in a really big way. And part of my journey has been learning to like not let them overwhelm me and get in the way of, you know, moving through life. So it's really interesting. Like I definitely connect with all of this gate and the fact that it's conscious makes so much sense. Like that has always been a cornerstone
Yeah.
of who I am and how I move through life. And so what's interesting is that it's conscious in Jupiter. And Jupiter is the planet of expansion and spirituality and positivity and optimism. Right. And so I feel that really deep
1,010%.
level.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with Mars is the planet of like action, aggression, and competition. And so I
Wow, I'm like, wow, light bulbs.
right, right.
Everything
So
now
when
I
it
can
being
experience everything.
right, and so like what you were describing, like that subconscious urge through this, and Mars can kind of lend to some drama, right? Like,
100%. It's like fucking fire. Like sweet,
yeah,
but it's wild.
yeah.
Like
So with
I
it being subconscious with that Mars energy, you're more likely to kind of give into that like shadow side of like being overly emotional and push, 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 instead of letting it just
Well,
be.
you know, it's a funny thing that you say that. It's like, if I don't get my way, I push myself harder. It's like
Mhm.
pain gives me power, where it's like, I don't know if that's actually a good thing. And it's like when you were saying like let myself feel like your emotions, I let myself feel my emotions, but I have that little voice in my head saying you're being a fucking pussy. Like, it's literally what it feels like. It feels like it's like I can't I'm a mess. Like, I'm crazy. I'm fucking insane. Like, that's, like, what I think I am, but it's like, why can't I just
Mhm.
sit with my emotions and just let it be?
Well, I
Even though
think
it's like
that
consciously it's letting me do that, but in my head, my control is trying to be like, "Shut up, Laura. Stop," you know?
well, I think that's social conditioning. The reason why you have that thoughts around that process is the social
Yeah.
conditioning.
And that's something that I'm working on. That's why I've been so, like, so intrigued by this gate because it's like there's things that I just can't let go of, and it's like, I don't know why I can't let go of that, you know?
Mhm.
Even, like,
Yeah.
letting go of, like, letting me like, just let me cry, like, it's okay to cry. Even, like, when I'm venting to my friends, I'm apologizing over and over again because I'm like, "I'm so sorry." They're like, "Laura, you're doing great. Like, it's fine." But I'm thinking I'm such a burden, you know? It's just like it's just like it's crazy, but it's like now that I'm connecting with it, okay, it's like let these things happen and let it flow, and if it's for me, it's for me, you know?
Yeah.
When it comes
Yeah,
to sorry,
that's
go
like that's the art of surrender, right? Like, knowing that what will be if it's meant to be for the highest good of all.
yeah. Well, and
Where
it's
surrender on the low end is like, "I don't feel like trying, I'm just gonna give up."
totally. Well, and it's funny because it is about abundance, about creating abundance, and well, you clearly can't create abundance if you're self-sabotaging all the time, right? Like, the only
Right.
way you can create abundance is allowing yourself to accept the person that you are, working with that energy, and then having abundance come through you. Like, you can have everything that you deserve. Like, even if it's but, like, would that wealth mean to you, right? You could have $5 in a pocket and still be so abundant, or you can have
Yeah.
$100 in your pocket and still feel abundant. Like, it's different for everyone. Again, this human design system is for you. Like, you can live the life you want however the fuck you want it, you know? It's like it's about accepting this energy that's within you and, like, working with it. So,
Yeah, radical self-acceptance. It's
yeah.
so key to so much. And
tot
that's where I think the beauty of human design and astrology lies, that, like, it gives you permission to be the person that you are, right? Like, it's not just that you're a whiny little bitch, it's that you're working the shadow energy of, your Venus conjunct Pluto or something like that. And, like, understanding that empowers you to not be the whiny little bitch anymore, as an example. You know what I mean? Like, it's there's that fine line between know thyself to be better and
Yeah.
not to make excuses for continuing to be an asshole.
Yeah, totally.
It's and that takes work though, right? Because it can be so much easier to just use it as an excuse to not be better, especially if you've created like the neural pathways and the habits and the patterns around, living in the shadow energy. It takes a different kind of energy to transition that. It takes work. Um, and that can be really hard. And that's why like coaching is so great, because a coach will help you to see that brighter aspect and help you find the steps you need to take to get those changes little by little, so that your nervous system can be regulated and allow in these changes in a more meaningful and deeper way, so you can actually like change your life, shift your life for the better.
Yeah, totally. So, like, as I was saying something about the gene keys. So, if you're not familiar with the gene keys is Richard Rudd came up with the gene keys after he studied with Ra in human design, and he took all of those lines from the gates, and he made them into like the gene keys. So, the gene keys are like that's like your neural pathways. That's like your DNA. So it's like he made this beautiful, almost like Bible. It's like an encyclopedia of all the traits that you can have, and, like, so the shadow work is victimization. So, like, sorry. one of all out of all the gene keys, this is the one we humans most long for, and this is the gift we will soon be given as a collective level. So the entire reason behind the timing of this work on the 64 gene key lies here within the 55th shadow. So it's been the theme of humanity since the development of the human. So basically, the shadow of victimization and its programming partner, the shadow of dishonesty, programs all human beings at a cellular level to a single effect. So they ensure that every individual becomes his or her own worst enemy. So like, isn't that fucking wild? So like we were like, so if we, me and Christie are doing a coaching thing, and we're talking a lot about the judge. That's like our
Mhm.
saboteur, and all the saboteurs around it are like, what are the like the worst ones for you? It's like basically this is like the one key that like makes us our own worst enemy. And when we are like we are spiritual beings in a weird way. Like you and I are, but like because we have that energetics. But like there's some like, I was looking at some other people's and I'm like, oh, they don't have it. I wonder how they feel with that. You know,
Mm. Yeah,
they're
that's
spiritual in their own
interesting.
way, but it's a different kind.
I feel like those are probably the people who are the atheists,
Oh, 100%.
you know? I could be wrong. There could be people with this gate who are atheists, and there could be people without this gate who are not atheists, but it would be an interesting study for sure.
Well, and like so the universal law, this colle- sorry, the universal law, this is known as what comes around goes around. So what goes around comes around. So it's like a lot of karma, like
Mm.
like karma aspects to it. I mean, sorry, this is a long book. You could see all the work. But I mean, it just gets more in depth of like each gate and like like the keys with it and how it works. A lot of these
That's
people,
fascinating.
it is really cool. I mean, now I'm like nerding out, like read all the gates, and now I'm like, okay, I want to know more. This has definitely been very beneficial. But like as I was saying, like I've noticed like from you is like you really express your spirituality in a way that's like, oh, sorry. Like I want to say like a million one things, but like you express your spirituality in a way and you bring it up. Whereas me is like I express it, but I'm afraid of being seen, of having that spirituality. Where I think that's my unconscious Mars.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
constantly competing with myself and like, trying to get that upper hand. It's like weird.
Well, the fact that your Mars is subconscious or unconscious means that there's like a fear of taking action around it,
Yeah.
which is interesting. Where for me, yeah, I'm like more like that conscious Jupiter energy, which makes sense, like being a Pisces ruled by Jupiter, right? I'm just like, here it is. Like I remember talking to a woman who's like known me since I was like a child. She was like close with my family, and she's like, I always knew you were spiritually as a young child. Like my brother was like, you were an intuitive little baby, like it's definitely a very much a part of my essence.
Yeah. I feel like, well, here's the thing. People could see it in me. I couldn't see it in myself.
Mm.
That makes sense. Like a lot of people would be like, oh, like you have this like way. And I'm like, what the mean? I'm like, I'm literally human. Like, I don't know, the vessel. I don't know like what the fuck you're seeing that I'm not seeing until like recently, whereas I started connecting to this on a deeper level.
Mm.
And also what's cool about Gate 55, which I'm going to, I'm trying to find it here. Um, okay. So Gate 55 is actually their astrology is Pisces.
Oh, go
That makes
figure.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So their human design, like quantum human design, is all about faith. Its biology is like it's coordinated with the kidneys and the pancreas. And then its program partner is 59, which if you were to look, I don't know what that means. So don't worry about it. We'll cut that. But like, so yeah, this is like a whole different like outline that I have, but it's like all about like knowing and like it's like all individual. It's all like right. Spiritual awakening is an individual practice. It's not,
Hmm.
it's not a collective. So yeah, people who are going back to that narcissistic stuff is like people who are trying to make this like praise me, do this. It's not the right way of doing things.
No, right? That like they're leaving out the most important part of a spiritual practice, which is humility, right? It's like once you have these awarenesses, you should always humble yourself to recognize and remember that you are indeed just a human. You are a spiritual being in a human body, right? Like, yes, we are of spirit, but let's humble ourselves back to remembering that we're still in this human experience. And people tend to forget the humanity of it, and that's where they start to really dive into like actual narcissism, and that is the makings of like cult leadership right
Yeah.
there, right? Where it's like, I am the end all, be all, know all, listen to me, I'm right, you're wrong, right? That's like the basis of the Catholic Church and priesthood, essentially, right? Like, I am the conduit for Christ. I know the answers. You can't talk to him. I can. Like, there's a lot to unpack around that.
I almost feel like working with this gay is a great manifestation tool.
Mm, yeah. Because when you can truly connect to spirit and be with and trust yourself to spirit, like there's so much that the world has to offer you.
Yeah. But I mean,
And that
honestly, it comes back to that, like that, sorry, the money, like the money aspect of it. Like you have, I agree with that. Like
mhm,
I could have $5, but I mean, I can be like the healthiest, happiest me.
yeah. Yeah, it's like, what do you do with that $5 is what
Exactly.
makes you abundant.
And like I feel like when I have more money, I like share, I give, like I want to help. Like when I am like really that abundant financially. So it's like either or, it's still like it's money is just a fucking
Well, money is a tool, and
money
it
is a tool. Money's a
enhances
resource.
money is a tool, it enhances the energy of the person that already exists, right? So if
Yeah.
you're greedy, money's gonna make you greedy. If you're giving, money's gonna make you more giving. And see, for me, this is a really interesting thing. We are taught that money is evil and that rich people suck, but then why does the church want everybody's money, right? Like, oh, it's evil,
That's
so
the
only rich
thing.
can
It's
handle it. No, it's like they're disempowering people from being their own abundance, from needing to rely on something other than
well,
themselves.
it's like, and that goes also with playing that victim. And I feel like I had this conversation with Ashley in the episode of the energetics of money. Because it's like,
Mm,
like people will always be like, well, they're horrible people because they have money and they do this. I'm like, why can't you have that though?
mhm.
Like, what if you change your mindset? Like, and being like, actually, those, what do they call this? They call it something. It's almost like when instead of like looking at someone and having jealousy, that's actually creating an energy that's like not going to
Scarcity mindset.
a scarcity mindset. But there's a, instead of looking at that, be like, these people are like the people that you look up to. Those are the people that you want to be. Then you have to like almost like fanboy, like don't like be like, ugh, like what if you learn from those kind of people?
Well, and this is what's interesting is that, like, we we've been manipulated to think that wanting money or needing to have money is such a bad thing. And again, this is my personal thing where that's an attempt of the church to eliminate people's personal power. Like, money's bad, so give it to me so you don't have any. It's really, you're just, the church is manipulating people into giving their personal power away. Whereas we could recognize that it's not about the money, it's about having access to resources, and that everybody should have equal access to resources. And money is how we measure the amount of access we have to those resources. And so we shouldn't like hate on rich people. We should instead learn how to be rich ourselves, thereby inhibiting the greed of the people who keep all of the resources to themselves.
Well, I think this goes more deeper than just money. It's about abundance and everything. It could be like saying like you want
Well, as
like
I said, resources.
well, and resources, yeah, like but like it could be like you wanting a relationship that's real and connected and you see someone else have it instead of being jealous of that person. It's like,
Mm.
what if you like learn from that? It's like how can you learn and how can you find those tools to create that abundant relationship that you're looking for?
So that actually brings up something interesting. Like I was single for a very long time. And
I'm you right now. I'm like you.
but no, like up until like, I my longest relationship was 2 I only had 2 long-term relationships before Anthony. One was 1 year and one was 2 years. Like I was perpetually single. But I always believed that like when I found the person I would be with them and that's it. And that's why I was like single because I just hadn't found the right person. But what was interesting is whenever I would see, like, a happy couple, I would automatically, like, in my head, judge their relationship, and whenever they break up, I would celebrate it. And I would be like whenever someone had a long-term relationship, I would be really jealous and be like, hateful on it. And I think it was from that, like and I think this is kind of what you're describing, was, like, that place of, like, wanting it, and so I would, like, hate on other people who had it. And I would like cheer people breaking up because I just like, I'm still working through like that, why that mechanism is in me, like where that comes from. But even now that I'm in a relationship, in a good relationship, I still like get happy about people breaking up sometimes. And I'm just like,
Well, because you're
why?
looking outside. Some of them actually, like I see, that they shouldn't even, they're out of alignment, like completely, where they're like, it's almost a toxic, like super abusive,
Well,
like,
that's fair.
and that's like something where I'm like, please. Like, I remember my friend, she was in a relationship. I actually set them up. I feel like I was like, you guys look like you hang out. Well, it was horrible. But I just sit there and like instead of me being like break up with them, break up with them, break up with them, I'm just like, you know what? This is her journey, like whatever. I didn't see her for a long time. She finally broke up with him, and I was like, she was like told me she broke up with him, and I was like, congratulations. I'm just like you need to celebrate. And she literally was like, I needed to hear that. I was like, I'm so happy because I was like, I wasn't gonna. I told her I was like, I was always supporting you, but like I was like, I also like couldn't like force you to do what. And she's like, I know. She's like, she knew.
Yeah.
But it's just
Yeah, well, that's definitely one aspect, but there would even be, like, happy couples that are still together that'd be like, "When are they gonna break up?" Like, what like, there was just something in me that wanted to see broken relationships. Like, I don't and I that's probably a result of my own, like, childhood and, like, the lack of example of healthy relationships
yeah.
for me as a child, like, probably is really what it boils down to. But like having that awareness of that's what I was doing helped me to like kind of recognize that, break that pattern and heal that within myself so that I could be open to finally having like a long-term partner that I could feel safe relying on.
Yeah.
And even now, I feel like we've been together like 5.5 years. I'm only just now really feeling safe and allowing myself to trust the relationship that I can rely on Anthony and that he's here to support me. And we definitely have our ups and our downs, but like really like accepting each other fully um and like knowing that that doesn't mean that the relationship is just going to disintegrate because
Yeah,
we
totally.
allowed ourselves to be ourselves. So it's been an interesting journey for sure.
But it's like funny, it's like that. That's just like a reactive trait of that gate too. If you think about it, like,
Mm,
constantly blaming people and things outside of yourself, not taking responsibility in your victim status. Like it's like I understand like what you're like saying. And I was like, that's why I was like brought up that whole thing of like instead of being jealous of those people, like how could he like grow with them or like actually like
right.
inspired by those people? It's like I mean, I think I've always been kind of a person where like I can see a good relationship and I can see a shitty relationship. That's because I'm not constantly observing. And like I'm always looking like I'm like you, very similar, where it's like I'm looking for the right thing. I'm not just gonna like put myself in a situation like I've done it before where I wish like was completely disconnected. But like I'm not gonna put my if I feel there's good communication here, if I feel like I can really honestly trust that person, I'm in it. Like, but I mean, my spleen kind of makes that decision for me because that's my authority. Where it's like it's an instant knowing,
Mm,
which is
yeah.
crazy. Yeah, things kind of fall apart because but it's like in that moment in time, like something's right about that.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't found anyone that matched that. So it was like I'm just hanging out.
So even though I'm my spleen isn't my authority, it's defined. So I still have like, so I'm just curious, like from human design standpoint, I still have that like instinct, right? Like,
Yeah, you still have that knowing, like, people like, you still are a safe energy to be around, like, because you have it, defined.
right.
Like, you
Okay.
still probably have, like, that you don't have wait, let me sorry, I'm looking at your chart right now.
Because I'm
Like,
definitely
people
very
like you have
instinctual.
very well, and the thing is, like, because you have so much activeness, like, not only is that gate defined or that center defined, but you have gates defined in it too. So,
Mm,
that's pretty cool, you know? So, yeah,
yeah.
you have good energy there. It's just that that's just not your authority. Your authority is emotional, where you need to, like, ride the wave.
Interesting. I can trust my intuition, but
Yeah.
ultimately it's about processing that emotion first.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating too. And I'm just like thinking of my own personal work. Like this morning, like I had a difficult scenario came up. And through the work, before I would have just allowed like that difficult situation to kind of overwhelm me and get stuck in that emotion. And I would just like be in a funk all day. And from learning the tools from the PQ coaching thing that we've been doing, I was instead able to feel it and let it flow through me and then move on with my day instead of just
Yeah.
like being stuck in it. So to me, that was like a huge, huge win today where I was just like, okay, I can feel my feels and still move on with my day and not let it wreck everything and play that victim card, right? It's like,
Yeah,
no, let's
totally.
pull up your
That's
pants, let's go.
funny, I had this decision to make, which was kind of work related, but I knew it was unethical, but I was, like, kind of, like in my mind, I was like, "That would be kind of intriguing, like, this would be fun, maybe I should make that decision," but I basically was like, "Can I get back to you when I see you?" To this person, and so, as soon as I saw that person, my body was like it just was like, "Nope, mm-mm." Like, and I knew and
Mm.
I'm so happy because, like, there was a moment in time I was gonna text that person because I get excited and I just wanna, like, be impulsive, and I was, like, so close to, like, the day before I saw that person, like, I was gonna, like, text that him and be like, "This is what's happening," and I'm so happy I waited because as soon as I felt his energy, I was like, "Mm-mm, that no,
Yeah,
I'd rather keep this, like, safe," you know? But it was
yeah.
so happy because it was like, I'm happy I'm back to, like, being that having that intuitive, like, quick knowing, you know? Instead of,
Mhm.
like, listening because you should never okay, again, listeners, you should never listen to your mind. Your mind is playing tricks on you. Listen to your body, listen to your intuition, listen to your strategy and authority.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But you've probably been conditioned to listen to
Yes.
your mind.
Oh, yeah.
So,
It is your worst enemy, it literally is. It will
I
kill
mean, I
you.
and that's why a lot of the self-work premises, like, your thoughts are not real, your thoughts are not you, like, recognizing and understanding that, like, the thoughts are just a part of the brain's processes, but you have a whole body that you need to rely on when it comes to absorbing information to make decisions.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, understanding how chakras work and meridians, and now the added bonus of human design and these energy centers is so fascinating to me, and understanding like your nature versus nurture through astrology. Um, you know, it's there's never just one thing that's going to fix a problem. That there's it has to be a concert of things in play to help you get to the root of an issue. And I just want people to remember that. Like, it's never just one thing, it's many things coming together. Like, that's how we bake cakes. If you want the cake of life, allow yourself to pull the ingredients together and make something delicious and tasty.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at both of our motivations, we both are motivated through fear.
Mm.
I was like, "Oh, so, like, what's your stance on that?"
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm not really sure what to make of that, to be
I
honest.
believe
Like,
that. I think that as soon as I feel stressed and I feel like it's not gonna work out, I get really motivated
mm,
to do more. Not do more, like, do things smartly, but, like, if I feel like money is like, I'm not gonna like, okay, like, here's a good interest. Like, if I don't have enough money to feel like I can pay my bills, I freak out. And then as soon as the day is there, I'm good to go. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
I make that abundance because of, like, the fear that I have,
Mm.
which is, like, every day of my life.
Well, so let me ask you, I see on the chart it says perspective is wanting, and my perspective was survival. Like, what is that perspective about? That's something I've never seen on another chart before.
So, your perspective sorry, I have to, like, channel this right now. Um,
Like, what is the perspective about?
so I feel like it's, like, having the perspective after the motivation, like, well, the fear of wanting, right? So it's like, for me, I
Mm.
have this fear of, like, wanting, which is actually interesting because Gate 55 is all about the wanting to find the soulmate, the wanting to find that security and that stability. But like me and deconditioned, I'm sabotaging. I'm at my lowest frequency. But when fear comes in, it helps me get that perspective of the things that I want.
Oh,
That makes
okay.
sense.
So if then my perspective is survival, it's really about like making sure I have food on the table no matter what, kind of like
Yeah, totally.
dumb, dummy it down.
Yeah.
That makes sense when it comes to my shopping habits.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Well, this was really enlightening. And so just to kind of like wrap up, like we were talking about Chiron and Aries at the beginning. Um, right now, Chiron is an asteroid in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Takes about 50 years to go around the sun. It's got an oblique uh cycle or shape or what the fuck is it called? Path. It has an oblique path. Let's edit that. It has an oblique path around the sun, so its path through certain signs will be longer than others. But right now, Chiron just entered into Aries, so it transitioned out of Pisces into Aries. And what's really interesting about this, I was just like reading a little bit more about it. Chiron and Pisces is like having a lack of faith in the universe because Pisces is about faith in universe, and Chiron is all about our wounding, right? And how it interacts, how we interact with the world through our wounding. So for me in Gemini, my Chiron is in Gemini, it's conjunct my ascendant, and I'm such a verbal processor. Like it's like I have to communicate in order to heal. It's so real for me, and it's conjunct my ascendant. So like I really like that's part of like my message and my purpose in this world is to kind of like share that message. That's part of the reason I think why I'm so passionate about the work that I do, and I will say the things that people don't want to hear or are afraid to say for themselves. So with Chiron and Pisces, there's like a fear of trusting the universe. And then as it transitions into Aries, there's about wounding through the self, like really getting to, so like Pisces shifting in Aries is from the collective to individuality. And so the Chiron shift of healing is collective wounding versus healing that wounding on a very individualized level, and this can kind of lead to some of those narcissistic things, perspectives that I was kind of talking about at the beginning, where we get really caught because Aries is the first sign. It rolls over the head, so it's all about that me kind of perspective. Taking action from the motivation of self. I like the phrase for Aries is I am. So with Chiron and Aries, people with this transit and the energy of the next several months that Chiron is traveling through Aries, people are going to be more likely to take things on a personal level. The healing that's going to be coming up for people is about healing their true self, coming into terms into who they truly are, being able to show up um, fully as themselves without apology, but we have to be careful that we don't do this at the detriment of others. Let's check that egotism at the door. Let's check that narcissism at the door. We have to remember there's people around us that are affected by our behavior. And so while we can understand the bad behavior, we don't get to excuse the bad behavior. And remembering to take true accountability
Yeah.
for that behavior so that we can, again, be better for everybody involved.
Yeah.
So very
Wait,
interesting.
yours is in Gemini, mine's in Cancer.
Your Chiron's in Cancer. So with Cancer, Cancer is a very emotional sign. It rules over the fourth house of family. It rules over like the reproductive organs. So with Chiron and Cancer, your wounding is going to be more likely to be family based.
Uh,
Depending on what house it's in, can it kind of affect like how like what the relationship with your family is going to be, and also like what sign your fourth house is in will play a part in that. But a lot of your wounding and a lot of your healing journey will be to kind of work within your family relationships and create understanding. um, and also it's really important that you feel safe in your own home, and you're probably going to be more likely to want to live alone, which as I'm saying this kind of describes you pretty much.
You're like, you track. Well, it's funny. And I think a lot of the wounded healer for me is all about like I struggle with abandonment issues, like constantly feeling like I'm going to be left behind or
Yeah.
getting
Like
very
you
vulnerable
need
here.
to feel, like part of the collective. You need to feel that family.
Exactly. And you're
Yeah.
right. It's like I'm not going to move in with someone unless I know it's safe. Like
Yeah.
my space is so sacred. Like
Mhm.
if you're gonna be a part of my life, you better be like exactly what I'm looking for. Which again,
Yeah.
it's all about that fucking the gate of fate, the spirit. Like it's like it all tracks.
Well, and just another little thing about Chiron is it takes about 52 years for Chiron to return back to where it started from. So when you think about people in their 50s, you've had your midlife crisis with your Saturn return. This is where people start to really have like a better sense of who they are as a person. And, any residual like misalignment from their midlife crisis starts to finally resolve here, because then Chiron catches up to where it is in the chart, and there's kind of like this moment of like deep healing where you just are like, there's like self-acceptance comes on strong, right? And it's no mistake. It's not just because you're 50 years old, it's because Chiron's coming back home, and you kind of like get to revisit and understand how all the wounding you've gone through in your life has brought you to where you are. And like that's not a bad thing.
Well, and
So
honestly, like where do you think who do you think is having the midlife crisis? Is the people that stayed with the society's rules.
yep,
It's like
exactly.
you don't have to have a midlife crisis. You can have many crises throughout your life.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a midlife crisis. To stop being so goddamn strong and stop being like, I'm fine. Just deal with it. And you'll be so much more satisfied.
Yeah, for sure.
It's true. I mean, come on. Like, I think about people who are controlled or stuck in a situation they didn't want to be in, you
Yeah.
know?
No,
But
that's
they were
it's
trying to be the better person. And it's like, you now look at
well,
your health.
yeah, a lot of it comes down to, I think, like, men get that midlife crisis with the Saturn return, or like when it's like the Saturn gets square Saturn actually is more appropriate when that you're hitting that like age, like in your mid 30s. Traditionally, when you think about midlife crisis, before currently,
Yeah.
um, it's really about, people up until now, like, and you look at the generations from like that were born from like the 40s to the 80s, there was a strong sense of like family responsibility. You have to do this for the family before else, set yourself aside. And if you're constantly spending your life setting your own needs aside for the sake of the family, which to a certain extent needs to happen, but if it's at the detriment of you, like being who you're truly meant to be, like if you're constantly shoving it down, yeah, you're going to go into crisis. I mean, like actually, so Anthony loves It's a Wonderful Life. And I think that character is a great example of like that person who's setting themselves aside at a detriment, right? Like, but there was a beauty in that once he realized that like there was meaning to it. That was part of his life's journey and he found meaning, and it's really beautiful. But I also think it was just like kind of like a Hollywood way of like learning to suck up all the shitty things that life's given to you. And it's, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of wonderful messages to that meeting. I'm starting
No,
to get off on it.
I actually love that movie too. And like, but it's like also like, a part of me, like, it's like deep down inside is like, I made all of my choices and now I've got to lay in my own bed, you know?
Yeah,
And it's
100%.
so true, but it's like I didn't do the same thing that society would have probably wanted me, where I just like got married at a young age, had kids, like raised my family.
Right.
Like, and I'm seeing not consequences from it, but it helps me realize, no, I'm doing exactly what I need to do. I still want all that. I just want it for like what I'm looking for. Like I
Yeah.
have those wantings. Like, but
Yeah.
yeah, at the same time, like, well, maybe this is what I deserve. It's like I have that evil thing in my in my head.
Well, you reap what you sow, right?
Yeah,
You
right? Yeah.
know, and that comes back to taking accountability for yourself and your actions, you
Oh
know?
yeah,
So,
100%.
and again, there's that fine line between like, it can go both ways. Are you putting aside yourself at the detriment, or are you putting yourself forward at the detriment of others, you know? So, finding that balance of where you can show up for other people and still honor your own needs. I
Yeah.
think that is like a huge part of every person's healing journey, because people need people to survive. We can't do this on our own. We have to be able to show up for other people and show up for ourselves. Like it doesn't, they're not mutually exclusive. And, we've been conditioned societally for a lot of different reasons that I've sort of touched on upon already to just put ourselves aside. I'm like, that's just not, that doesn't really serve anybody in the long run. That's where family trauma keeps getting passed down generation after generation. And, I could go on and on and on. So,
Totally. I know. We should wrap it up. But this is good.
that'll,
We had this conversation.
yeah, it was a great conversation. I'm glad to be back in the saddle where Laura and I have found a consistent time in our schedule to come together and show up for this podcast on a weekly basis. So stay tuned for all the goodness.
And if you're listening and like you don't have this gate defined, gate 55, then hit us up. Let us know what your thoughts are on this, like about what you experience. Like I'm
Oh,
actually
yeah, I would love to
curious
hear
to
that.
know like an empty energetic gate that's like I'm still thinking there's a way to use these. But
100%.
I don't think you can. Like it's like you don't have that kind of energy in you, so you'll need to meet someone that connects that has that energy.
Well, every person has the gates. It's just a matter of whether or not it's activated,
Well, that's
right?
what I'm saying.
So,
But, like, if it's not activated, it's like you really don't use that energy at all.
yeah. So, what energy do they get to rely on?
So
Tell us
exactly.
in the
So,
comments.
yeah, tell us in the comments. You can, yeah, just message us on our Instagram and
Yeah, you
yeah,
can find me at Reaching Better Alternatives. I am going to start doing Instagram live lunch break readings every Thursday, and I'm on Facebook Lives every Wednesday evening. You can find me if you want to jump in for a live community reading. It's a lot of fun.
yeah, I may pop in here and there depending if I'm available.
Yeah,
For the,
you've made it for the
well,
most part.
I made it the first time,
Yes.
but either way, well, yeah. And I have, go to my website, lauralouu.com. You can follow me on Instagram. I'll put all of our information onto the show notes. And yeah, you guys all have a good day. We love you. We appreciate you. Please share our knowledge with the world by
Yes,
sharing.
if you like this episode, please share this episode with your friends. We are here to spread love. So help us do that. We greatly appreciate you joining in with us for today.
All righty. Love and light, everyone.
Namaste.